But I dig that the way that color pops is just
Ferrari red.
yeah.
Do you know there's 2 Ferrari reds?
2 different types of Ferrari reds.
Yeah, so there was
There's only one Ferrari red.
No, back in the day when Ferrari were sponsored by Marlboro, the Ferraris were actually a Marlboro color red.
Okay.
They were painted in Marlboro red because it looked different on TV to what it looked in real life. So they got the color right for the TV as opposed to what you saw live. So there were 2 different types of reds. And you can actually, I still believe, you know, when I was looking at Ferraris the other day for a new purchase, there's actually 2 different types of reds you can buy. You can buy the Ferrari red, but there's a slightly, it's like
there's an orange
red.
tint. Wow. I always thought as much, but I didn't actually know that was a thing.
Legit.
Hey?
Legit.
Okay. So which one did you settle on?
I went Ferrari red.
Okay. And the model?
I'm happy with it.
Yeah.
Hey,
like a new man.
good.
Be cool one day when we can have that kind of conversation, eh?
Yeah. A few more Patreon supporters and we'll get there.
Yeah.
You and I have been quite keen to go to Dubai on holiday at some point. Dubai appeal to you as a holiday destination?
I wouldn't mind going to Dubai at all. I've got a lot of mates that are living, working there at the moment. So, yeah, definitely. I've never been to Dubai, to be honest. So I wouldn't mind going, checking the place out. But
Saudi, ever been a place you've been keen to go?
never been on the radar.
Never been on the radar.
No.
It might be in the near future.
I believe so. I'm seeing this pop up more and more. There seems to be a huge, I don't know, drive from the Saudis to make the place more attractive.
Yeah, so obviously there's this, they're well into now a long-term strategic transformation away from its economy of just oil. So I'm sure you've heard about Riyadh Air, the new big airline that's going up, and it's a hell of an interesting subject, Ryan. So first of all, there's never been an aircraft deal this big, straight out the gate. So 39 aircraft firm orders for Boeing 787-9s and another 39 for Saudi Air. So they're 2 separate airlines. Riyadh is going to be the new kid on the block, and then they're still having Saudi Air. What's interesting with this, Saudi is going to be kept as the traditional sort of, flag carrier, but Riyadh is going to be the airline that is going to bring in all the tourists. That's going to bring the Emirates-like airline, modern-day airliner.
I find that amazing. I mean, you read that the intention is to become a big part of the existing ME3.
Yeah.
And it's like, I'm still on the fence as to whether this is really cool. Is this just really overly ambitious?
No, I don't think it's ambitious. I think this, so Mohammed bin Salman, the crown prince there in Saudi, if he wants this to work, it's going to work. No question. And they've decided that this is going to work. So they want to turn Saudi into a tourist destination, similar to the likes of like a Dubai setup. Obviously, it's more traditional. You've been there before?
Saudi?
Yeah.
No. I've flown overhead Saudi Arabia many times, but never actually landed on the soil. No.
All right, so Mohammed bin Salman, 37 years old. He's seeking to identify with the country's young, large, and modernizing population. That is the future. So keep a lookout for this. It's not going to be a copy and paste of what you see at Emirates and Qatar. More like a mashup of Qatar, Emirates, and Etihad. So they're looking at, obviously they got this massive investment fund that they can tap into there. But they're looking to seek the scale of Emirates, the ambition of Qatar Airways, and the speed of Etihad, all while anchored by a domestic market like Turkish Airlines. So this is their big thing. But this is no pie in the sky. There's firm orders for those aircraft. They're putting a massive airport up there, a real modern airport. and this is going to happen.
Now that you mention it, when you started speaking about this, I actually Googled it because I remember reading this article a couple of weeks back about this airport, and obviously it all starts to make sense now. They're calling it the King Salman International Airport, due to be built in the capital, Riyadh. It will have no fewer than 6 parallel runways. Yes.
Yeah.
Allowing 185 million passengers to pass through annually by 2050. I mean, those are some big plans.
Big plans. Things around the world are changing. So obviously, they've had this Vision 2030 concept they've been talking about for a long time. All to do with national transformation, a whole whack of other things. But they are looking to operate the Middle East bloc similar to how Europe is at the moment. So if you look at the Middle East there with Abu Dhabi, Dubai, Riyadh, they're looking at this like a little, I suppose, starting off like a mini Europe.
Yeah.
And Riyadh is going to play quite a important role in the domestic structure around those around the areas there. So why is Saudi so important? Well, the big thing here, and I didn't realize this until researching this, but so often said of Dubai, it was built, let's build Dubai and the people will come. So they built Dubai relying on the fact, let's build something amazing and people will come, which they have. But in Saudi Arabia, they're already there. 36 million people in Saudi Arabia. That's a population of prospective passengers 3 times the combined population of the UAE and Qatar. Although around 40% of Saudi Arabia's population are immigrants, many of whom have lower incomes and travel opportunities than locals, that still leaves a large home population of 22 million, a stark contrast to the combined 1.5 million locals in the UAE and Qatar. So stand by for one hell of a big airline in the years to come, and it is happening. It's
just
done and dusted.
It's impressive. It's impressive. I mean, I can't believe that figure. 36 million people living in a desert type country. I mean, so that means your city or metropolis type areas are obviously very
much bigger already.
Congested.
Yeah.
I see they're going to call this the Aerotropolis.
Aerotropolis, yeah.
This airport that they're building.
So one of the operators we speak of a lot, Fly Dubai. Saudi Arabia is Fly Dubai's largest market. Etihad's second largest, and Emirates and Qatar's 4th largest. Just Saudi alone. They would all likely be larger if liberalized traffic routes were permitted. But yeah, quite interesting. And I didn't quite realize that the size of that place with the amounts of people and obviously the demand. Saudi, as an airline, has never quite lived up to any form of expectation, or they've never really tried to be what an Emirates or a Qatar is.
Yeah, it's just always been, they recognize that that's the flag carrier of Saudi or Saudi Arabia rather, and is what it is.
Basically, as you say, it's a flag carrier, that's it. But now this Riyadh Air will be the sort of modern ship that's going to bring the people in.
It's going to be a cool thing to watch.
Yep.
Develop and grow. Interesting, man.
Yeah, so Boeing forecasts over the 20 years between 2022 and 2041, the Middle East will need 1,290 new passenger wide-body aircraft. It's about 65 a year. In a single day in Saudi Arabia, Boeing sold the equivalent of 14 months' worth of deliveries, including the not-yet firm order for Saudi and Riyadh Air. So nearly 40% of that 20-year tally has already been reserved.
Good news for Boeing.
So story of the week this week, keep an eye out for a new major airline. And, so many youngsters getting into the airline game early these days. We're seeing, low-hour pilots getting good positions. What an opportunity something like this could potentially be. It's another Emirates on the,
Of course, yeah.
So.
And that's always been a major attraction for especially South African guys, go over to the Middle East. That's where the guys are earning decent money, I suppose. Tax-free salaries. Definitely makes it attractive to our type of demographic of pilot.
I think so. So, good story of the week.
Yeah.
We'll keep an eye on it. Yeah. RyanAIr. They had a bit of a dodgy landing the other day.
Bit of an oopsie in Dublin.
Yeah.
737 nose gear malfunction.
Anything to really report?
No, I
Was
think it
straightforward,
was
eh?
yeah, pretty well handled. I mean, they said they had a gear issue, landed the Erie.
Yeah.
Looked like there was some sort of tire burst or whatever. But
I couldn't quite find too much about it. Was it the first issue that happened? I think it was with JetBlue a while ago. That was to do with the nose wheel steering. Eh?
Yeah, so the nose wheel had actually come down, but it had like sort of locked itself in a
90 degree.
Sideways position. So when you landed, obviously the nose gear just sort of got eaten up by the runway. So I gather that was something similar. Of course, I couldn't find any hard facts on what actually caused it.
Yeah, Liverpool to Dublin was the flight, and they knew about the issue beforehand, obviously, and then declared the emergency. Everyone was fine. It just led to suspension of services from the airport. That's it. So pretty standard.
Overall, well-handled emergency. Good outcome for the passengers and crew. So
not the worst situation.
Yeah, tops to Ryan. Obviously, a good bunch of crew, well-trained guys, and they'll be here next week looking for South Africans to add to their component of good pilots, I suppose.
Yeah, competent pilots.
That's the word I was looking for.
RyanAIr get a lot of stick for their hard landings, I see. Because when that came out, everyone was like, "No, it's a standard
hard landing."
Hard landing by RyanAIr.
I think a hard landing is standing on a 737.
True.
From what I have never flown it, but it's apparently pretty difficult to pull off a greaser in that.
Mm-hmm. For the likes of you and me,
not quite so
not
much.
quite.
No. Every landing we greaser.
The world's most on-time airlines, Ryan. So latest data from Cirium reveals KLM was the world's most on-time airline in the global category for the month of February. Who was second? Iberia. I wouldn't have thought that, actually.
Funny enough, when I saw this title pop up on our list of topics to talk about, I went and researched the same information, and we've obviously got different sets of data. Because on the article that I pulled up, it comes up with Garuda Indonesia as being number one, and Safair, our very own local guys, as being number two.
Well, I've got Safair here, but they are number one in the African segment, but they're still below KLM. So I suppose is where you're drawing your data from, actually.
Yeah. No doubt yours is probably more accurate. This was on the 11th of January, 2023.
Yeah, this is slightly later.
Okay, so...
But it also depends. It's like Airlink, we were discussing this beforehand. Airlink is not in here, so they're not considering regionals.
But if Safair is on there, is Safair not part of
a low cost? So it forms in that like low cost category, which is a category that they're looking at. So I suppose it depends where you're drawing your data from.
Yeah.
If you take the data from the South African airports, I think Airlink is still number one, Safair number two. So it depends how they look at it, I suppose.
Yeah.
Interesting enough, Wizz Air, the world's worst offender for UK Airlines. Something like a 45-minute delay average per flight.
That's quite a lot, eh?
That's a lot.
Every flight. I mean, what the hell could they be doing wrong?
I don't know.
Is it a technical issue? Is it...
I can't believe it's technical. All the aircraft are pretty new.
Yeah. Is it? So it must be rotation planning.
Yeah.
What the hell?
But it does show a few things. And I think this OTP, so many of these operators these days, and particularly in the upper sort of echelons of the big office, expensive offices, to say, they really look at this OTP as a way of measuring performance. And having a OTP like Wizz Air is almost frowned upon these days. You're looking at the high 95% on these top airlines for on-time performance, which is extraordinary. If you think about how many flights they operate, and to operate 95% of them on time is itself pretty remarkable.
It's a massive achievement. And that's why, when I look at this, regardless of whether it's Airlink or Safair on this most punctual airlines in the world list, the fact that there's still two South African airlines on this list globally
it's pretty cool.
is actually a feather in our cap for South Africans, because
I think so.
Obviously our local airlines are doing something right. I mean, we've said it before, it's a team, it's a collaborative effort to get an airplane in the air on time. And just goes to show how well despite all the challenges we have here, how well the systems actually do work.
Do you think it's something to do as well with, there's a lot of new passengers flying around these days. New passengers, I mean, there's a lot of first-time passengers operating aircraft these days. My mom came up from Cape Town the other day. I mentioned it on the show. She came up from Cape Town to Johannesburg on an Airlink flight. The flight was delayed. I was very surprised because Airlink's hardly ever delayed. Some technical issue, they had to swap aircraft, whatever. It was no big deal. My mom, obviously, knowing how airlines work and, from me and all the rest, it was like a non-event. Going to be half an hour late, it's no issue.
Yeah.
It wasn't even like worth, her mentioning the fact that they were delayed, other than the fact that I had to go pick her up. Don't you find it's like a bit of a modern day thing to whinge and moan about?
Oh, man.
Whereas in the past, and people that know about aviation, there are so many things that can happen that can cause a delay. And a huge amount of those things are not even they're not. So you have a technical issue. Airlink flight, the Embraer 190, brand new aircraft's got a technical issue.
Yeah.
Airlink's fault?
No.
Same with the new 73 from Xwing. Technical delay. Whose fault? I mean, all they're doing is obviously erring on the side of safety. But, I mean, how do the airlines...
I love that you bring this up because I think it does seem that way. There must be a new sort of woke type of passenger out there.
Yeah.
You're talking about it, I know it from the charter side of things. There was a charter recently where the airplane flew out to Maritaba out there, northern South Africa, Valgefontein area. Patch of fog. Guys have to circle around for a little while, up to an hour. Eventually can't land at the strip, so they divert to another airstrip to wait for their passengers. Passengers have to get driven from this one strip to the other one. Causes about a 45-minute delay. But
whose fault is it?
Yeah. Whose fault is it?
Yeah.
A big scene gets made because, 45 minutes delayed. But
yeah,
how much worse would it have been if the guy had attempted a landing and pranged in bad weather?
That's my point.
It's all done with safety in mind. So the average passenger out there can actually just
relax a bit.
Yeah.
But that's my point. Is it the fact that the bosses and everyone is looking at these OTPs, the fact that there are news articles about it, there's multiple news articles about it. You pulled one, I pulled one. It's like a big thing. Whereas if you go back 10 years, was it such a big thing? I'm not so sure. I think it's become a big thing, with the modern way of that we do things, every little...
Yeah, it's a measuring stick to
right.
that they're using now to determine which airlines are doing better than others. I agree it works in some senses. I mean, on-time performance is a thing. Passengers want to know that if they go and book a ticket with an airline, that they stand a reasonable chance of making it to their destination on time. But making it to your destination alive is also a bonus.
But I'm going to... it is. But I want to stress another thing. When you buy a ticket, and this is something for me, and maybe because we're more in the know in the industry.
Yeah.
If I buy a ticket from Cape Town to Johannesburg and the flight is 45 minutes delayed, I don't care. What I care about is making sure that they actually get me to Johannesburg within a reasonable period of time on that same day. And how do you know you're going to do that? When you're with the likes of Safair and certainly Airlink, there's multiple flights. I'm not saying there's spare aircraft, but I'm sure that there's a aircraft that is available to be ferried, and there's options of getting yourself back or getting yourself to your destination.
Yeah, because you don't want the inconvenience of having to go and find a hotel, book into that, and go through that whole rigmarole again. Yeah.
So it's not so much the delay that worries me. I'd rather fly with an Airlink knowing, they've got a flight going in an hour and a half time. You can fly with them. They've got 12, 15, 30 flights a day, whatever it is. It's the options of getting backwards and forwards. That's the important thing. So for me, the fact that I'm supposed to depart at 1700 and depart at 1730, I don't give a shit.
No,
I just want to get there that day.
Go to the Spur and have another beer.
I think that's what flying at SACS for 10 years does to you, though. You just want to get there that day.
Yeah, it certainly hardens you up.
Yeah, 100%. This article now, Turkish Airlines to provide free and limitless messaging on all flights. So that's obviously internet-based messaging that's
Yeah.
going on.
So instant messaging, WhatsApp.
How does it work then? So does it limit it to messaging? I mean, or is it saying free and limitless Wi-Fi on the flight? Because it doesn't say Wi-Fi; it says messaging.
Yeah, I haven't figured that out. There's nothing that actually goes into the article that deep.
Or
How they actually control it. But I would imagine, maybe they just.
Can I throw something at you as well? So obviously, we're of that age now where you start thinking a lot. When I was young, we did things like this. When I was your age and you're saying to your lighties, we did things like this. Do you want things like this constant connection when you're on an airplane? Is one of the cool things about being on an aircraft the fact that I'm not available for 8 hours. I'm not going to respond to this email. I'm not available for a Teams call. Everyone knows I'm on a plane. Talk to me in 15 hours when I land at my destination. Otherwise, wind your neck in until I get there. But now you've got this connectivity. There's no excuse that you can't log on to this call and chat with your colleagues halfway across the world because everyone's connected. Why must you be connected? I don't want to be connected.
So I think you can get away with it.
And maybe that's why they've said messaging, because you can contact home and say, this is where I am. But maybe...
Well, that's when I read this. I thought that this was pretty cool because it's always great to be able to touch base with your loved ones and say, hey, listen, I'm still safe. We're crossing the Atlantic, blah, blah, blah. Or
that's a different story.
If you've been delayed, you can update whoever's going to pick you up at the airport on your arrival time. Saying, listen, please don't go to the airport and wait for me. It looks like we're going to be there at such and such time.
Yeah.
So from that aspect, I agree. It's 100% cool. I like the idea. With what you're saying, I also agree. It is kind of cool to be out of touch sometimes.
Mm.
But you have the prerogative of just saying, well, hang on, the airplane didn't have Wi-Fi. This particular airplane, because not all areas are equipped with Wi-Fi right now. So for the next couple of years or for the foreseeable future, you can still get away with that excuse.
Yeah. So enjoy it while you can. But it's coming. Obviously, all airlines soon will have that Wi-Fi option. Yeah. Cool in some ways, not so cool in others. The single pilot flight deck situation is back. I don't even want to talk about it this week. I think we should make it a story of the week next week. We can go into it a bit more detail. Because as much as the single pilot operations is pushed, the fight back from the unions is there saying, never going to happen, this is why. Then there's other news articles straight afterwards. There are now applications in for certification for pilotless flight decks, period. So not even going single pilot.
That's where I think this is probably going to be one of the most controversial subjects that we could probably talk about. Yeah. Because, I mean, we had a conversation with one of our good mates the other day, and he mentioned a few things that the aircraft that are currently flying are capable of doing that actually really make it plausible for the single pilot flight deck case. You know, the fact that they can fly an RA by themselves, etc., etc., etc. So it's a big one. Maybe we should put that on ice for now.
It is going to be on ice. That'll be our topic of the story for the story of the week next week. So if you want to chime in, send us a comment and something we can talk about on the show, please do so.
Yeah, let's throw that about because, I mean, where do you actually land on this? Because, it's cool in some ways for the airlines. Big cost savings, I suppose, less headaches with crew, etc., but it's gonna dampen the pilot shortage that we're excited about now. That's creating a lot of opportunities for our friends and colleagues. So
I'm not sure it's not going to cut the pilot shortage in half.
No, not by half.
Because it's only going to be certain aircraft, possibly things like A350s and that you can operate single pilot. But it's certainly going to...
It's going to put a spanner in the works.
It will.
Yeah.
But it's not a done deal. There's big fight back from the pilot unions around the world. But like I say, applications are ready and for pilotless flight decks. So what do you want? Pilotless flight deck or single crew flight deck? It is coming.
Yeah. Heavy.
CRJ 1000 low approach inquiry stresses verification of altimeter pressure settings. You see this one? A Hop Bombardier CRJ 1000 descended below the glide path on approach to Nantes. Investigation authority says the crew was instructed to descend to 3,000 feet, first altitude assignment below the 5,000-foot transition level, on a QNH setting of 1002, which is rather low. The crew read back the instruction incorrectly, citing a setting of 1021. Error was not detected by the air traffic controller. This meant the aircraft's altimeter gave the pilots a false reading, of course, indicating the jet was higher than its actual altitude. It says the omission resulted from the crews experiencing difficulty in reading flight plan information owing to the turbulence generated by a storm that they were flying around at the time. Investigators found the crew didn't verify QNH settings after descending below transition altitude. The aircraft proceeded to descend towards the runway, but flying 530 foot below the correct flight path. Only after the jet descended below 788 feet, with the altimeter incorrectly reading 1,300 feet, did the controller receive a minimum safe altitude warning as the aircraft entered a region with 770 feet minimum obstacle clearance. So it's a bit of AI doing some work there on the ATC side. The controller alerted the crew, telling the pilots to check their altitude. One of the pilots initially queried whether the alert was meant for them, because the altimeter reading was 1,200 feet on a QNH of 1021, which is when the mistake was picked up. So instead of executing a go-round, the crew corrected the altimeter settings and continued the approach visually, joining the normal glide path 12 seconds later, while 1.7 nautical miles from the runway threshold, and subsequently landing without further incident. None of the occupants, of course, were injured.
That could have had a different outcome.
It could have, if the weather was worse and it wasn't picked up. And I'm not so sure. Do the airports in South Africa have alerts to the air traffic controller to tell them that the pilot's below a minimum threshold of height? I don't know. I don't know the
Definitely not
answer.
at all of our airports. Yeah, that's quite scary. High to low, careful, go.
Mm-hmm.
I remember that quite well from early days of flying. But I think the one thing we do differently here is when we get descended below transition altitude, we do get given the QNH reading again. So there's always that double check.
Yeah, there could be obviously that these guys are French,
Mm.
and the 1002 is lower than what you normally are used to setting. So they read back 1021.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
obviously it resulted in that. But yeah, 1.7 miles from the runway, visibility couldn't have been that good, or they would have picked up the poppies being all red. So they obviously didn't see that.
Yeah, so how stable was that approach?
No, it wasn't a stove. It was definitely a come see me in my office on Monday morning type of approach. But it goes to show, CRJ 1000, a real modern aircraft, and they still have these issues. It goes on to say, and I think a lot of these real new modern aircraft, you and I haven't had the privilege of flying them, but that you do get all sorts of tech available these days to alert you, look, you've set the wrong setting here.
Yeah. It's like having a third pilot in the cockpit, so.
Exactly. And imagine you by yourself on the flight deck.
Then there's only two of you.
Huh?
You and this robot.
Yep. Well, that's the way it's going.
It's going to be lonely, man.
Yeah.
You know, I can't imagine that there'll be a bunch of oaks in 30 or 40 years from now that will
Overly keen on doing it.
start a podcast saying, talking about flight deck banter when it's just you and this AR.
Yeah.
That's going to suck for the
For
the only pilot.
Not the best. It'll suck almost as much as it does for the Aeroflot pilots that had to fly the A330 to Iran for repairs amid some sanctions, of course, that's going on.
Aren't they supposed to be like building their own spares and all that now? The
Yeah,
Russians?
I suppose it takes time. But so Iran, very, very used to obviously doing their own repairs and things like that. They've got quite good at it. So the A330s from Aeroflot are off on their way to Iran for some much needed TLC.
I'm sure.
Yeah. A bit of OEM news, Ryan. So Icelandair, they've now signed for 13 A321 XLRs. That's to replace the 757. Can you believe they're still flying those 757s? The carrier's got a fleet of 15 of them. I love that 757. I think it's one of the best looking aeroplanes. Must be a hell of a plane to fly.
Hey, you're going to see more and more of them get taken up now by the cargo operators
Mhm.
because it's a hell of a cargo
Yeah, it's a machine.
area. So very cool, man.
Yeah, so they're being replaced over there. Airbus deliveries drop as supply chain has hit the A350 production line. So they're not meeting their targets at this stage, but Airbus says deliveries fell by 11% on its industrial basis. That's because of 127 jets. Basically, supply chain, go back to the whole pandemic and all the rest. It's now hit certain parts of the A350. So
Can't believe that's still a thing.
it is,
Honestly.
but it's going to carry on for a long time.
Yeah.
No doubt about it. And Airbus to open a second A320 final assembly line in Tianjin.
Didn't they just recently have the Airbus that was completely built in China
They did, I believe.
into service or something like that?
I can't remember.
There was an article I had lined up a few weeks back. I can't recall it now, but I remember reading something along those lines.
Interesting with this, the European aircraft manufacturer opened a final assembly line in Tianjin in 2008. That was the first one. One of 4 for the A320 family, alongside those in Hamburg, Toulouse, and Mobile in the USA. It has since assembled more than 600 aircraft from the Chinese plant. 600 is a decent amount. So a second one going in there. It shows the demand for those aircraft in that area.
It's very cool.
Very, very cool. Recruitment news, Ryan. You mentioned it last week, and man, oh man, are the carriers in Hong Kong pushing for people to please go to Hong Kong and please come fly for Cathay Pacific. There's articles out for Cathay and Hong Kong Airlines as well. Hong Kong Airlines trying to secure a pipeline there through one of the local flight schools.
Yeah.
It's going to produce a lot of pilots for them. But Cathay,
I gather there's been a mass exodus out of Hong Kong recently
Yeah.
with first of all the way the crew were treated with this whole pandemic bullshit,
yeah,
and their extended long lockdowns and all that crap. As the States has opened up, most of the American guys have gone back home,
yeah.
earning decent bucks. And
I noticed some of our friends and colleagues that went across to some Hong Kong operators are also back home. So it's not just the Americans. I think a lot of
I think
people
a lot
that
of
were
guys
operating there across the board have come back.
Yeah,
But again, things change. It's now new. There's no longer those same restrictions. There's no Hong quarantine going on anymore.
Yeah.
So it's a different place. And now they're trying to encourage,
yeah.
expand its team from cadet pilots to first officers if you want to join the Cathay Pacific family in Hong Kong.
Still not a bad place to consider, especially if you're young and you want to go and make some
Yeah.
good ammo.
Yeah.
Potentially retire earlier. Definitely a place worthy of looking at. And
So as you mentioned, there was that virtual roadshow. Is that virtual roadshow coming up? But that just seems to be, they're rolling those out. That they need crew. They need crew. They're adding the flights back. They want to grow it again, and they need crew. So it's a real viable option. Indian aviation news. India, Ryan, is a market on its own. It really, I'm excited about the Indian market. I really want to keep an eye on it. I'd like to report on it a lot more than we have. And I'd like us to actually grow our podcast in India, because I believe that this is of what's happening in the rest of the world. And I know we've story of the week talking about Riyadh Air and what's going on there in Saudi. But man, oh man, is India an exciting place. So 31,000 pilots and 26,000 mechanics in the next 20 years, says Boeing, that they need.
Insane numbers.
It's insane numbers. And
Yeah.
the market there is just growing so quick. If you ask yourself why, it's basically the existing population there now. There's a hell of a lot more people in that existing population that now has the means to travel by air. You know, if you go back 10 years, they didn't have the means, didn't have the finances to travel by air. They do now. And it's just, this market is just blowing wide open. So it's not just in terms of commercial aircraft flying around, it's business aircraft, it's training organizations, and everything in between. It's a massive market. And I want to now report that we are going to be talking about the Indian market a hell of a lot more on the RyanAIr podcast.
100%. That's very cool. I mean, India's always been some sort of understated,
Yeah.
globally when it comes to aviation news. And this is cool because, I mean, a headline like India may require 31,000 pilots and 26,000 mechanics in the next 20 years is saying one thing. But everything that goes around in the background, guys, 31 pilots, how many cabin crew does that mean?
Yeah.
Ground staff,
That's massive.
airport operational personnel. It actually, if you start going down this a little bit deeper,
The aviation economy there is huge.
it sounds like it's exploding.
It's an exciting place,
Yeah.
exciting market to keep an eye on. So we're certainly
cool.
going to do that. Switching across to African aviation, Rwanda signs a code share agreement with Turkish. Good for Rwanda. They open up. Turkish still fly to the most destinations of any airline in the world. They did at one stage.
Yeah.
Huge amount of destinations. So good option there for Rwanda. They look like they're doing well. And a few South Africans going across there for flying jobs that I know of.
Yeah.
That's good. FastJet, they've launched a few new Zim routes as well, Ryan.
Yeah, alongside the 145s that they've been operating, they've got a few Embraer 120s
Yeah.
that are cruising around now, which is great. I mean,
Kariba and Hwange National Park, I believe.
look, Zimbabwe is still, I think, one of those places in Africa that's got some of the most exquisite destinations.
Legit.
Vic Falls, one of my most favorite places in the world.
Yeah.
I've been to Hwange as well. It's cool. I mean, the fact that there's that amount of aviation going on in Zimbabwe,
That's amazing.
very cool. So kudos to FastJet, and nice to see something expanding in Zim.
As you said, Ryan, operated by the 30-seater Embraer 120s. New flights are already available for booking through the usual online trade portals. So good news there.
I found this Embraer 120 thing a fascinating subject because all of a sudden it just feels like there's more and more Embraer 120s being operated around the world.
Yeah, it's amazing, eh?
It's an area that you didn't really hear a lot of in the past, but now the Aussies are flying them. There's quite a few of them in Africa.
It's a real workhorse.
Oh, interesting.
Good area. Are you one of those guys with a holiday home in Plet?
No, that's coming after I've bought the Ferrari.
Yeah, that's coming after the podcast.
I want the Ferrari
blows up.
first, and then I want the house and
Yeah.
kids. Yeah, that's my order priority.
All right. Well, Plet Airport, they've sorted out a few issues that they were having there. The people that own the hangar owners, so the Hangar Owners Association, I believe, basically got together and they've sort of taken over the master lease of that airport.
Very cool.
Good step, I think.
Yeah, it's nice to see the communities are actually doing more and more about trying to sort out these government-owned facilities.
Government-owned
Basically,
cock-ups.
They've highlighted to the municipality down there, like, listen, you bunch of pipes are losing like R1 million a month. We can sort
it out
for you. So people taking matters into their own hands and getting things done. It's
good to see.
Yeah.
Main benefits of the lease agreement with the Hangar Association is that it will lead to significant positive swing in revenue for the municipality of almost R1 million, as opposed to the current losses being incurred at the airport. A further boost to the airport is that the commercial airline Semair is to extend its MOA that was due to have expired on the 31st of March, which will ensure Plet continues to be served by a regular airline service. That's important, eh?
No, of course.
Good job, Semair.
Yeah. At least, when we do eventually buy our holiday homes down there.
You got someone to fly you there.
Yeah.
This article came out. I actually wasn't so sure if it was an April Fool's article, so I avoided talking about it. It was to do with OR Tambo upgrades and refurbishments on track. Because I went there the other day, and it's a flipping dog show.
Nothing's changed.
Nothing's changed. It's a disaster. The parking's a disaster. It looks really, really third world. But
I think I know which article you're talking about. It's the one where they were bleating about, they took the media on some sort of a hike around the airport, showing them all the plans
what
and
they're
the
doing.
intended upgrades.
Yeah.
All just smoke and mirrors.
But I dropped my mom off there the other day. I poked my head in, and it's exactly how it looked 10 years ago. And it looks just a bit shabby. So there was another article out saying, they're getting e-gates and everything there. And
Yeah.
Yeah, let's wait and see. They got those fancy X-ray scanners in there. I don't know how many years ago. They were never used, remember?
Yeah. They've been
Going
white elephants
through-
for how long?
Going through customs there, never used. So let's just hope that they do sort out OR Tambo, because it is still the main gateway into South Africa.
Actually makes you wonder, and one of our colleagues, we were having a conversation earlier, talking about airports around the world, worldwide. Is Joburg really that bad? I'd still rate it up there as one of the top airports in the world. I mean, it's better than some of the European places I've been to.
Absolutely. But you know what's so irritating? You've got this airport, the infrastructure, that everything there is fine. You know, they need to upgrade things like dimensions here. They are upgrading the toilets and all that sort of stuff. But there's no excuse for it to look so shabby.
Yeah.
In a country where, and we talk about things that it's the cleanliness of it, certainly on the outside part. There's restaurants and that are still no occupants in there since COVID. And there's kind of no excuse for that now. You look at it and say there's an opportunity here to have a real proper hub of an airport.
Yeah.
And it's almost like, particularly if you go have a look at what Cape Town looks like.
Yeah.
You know, Cape Town probably also needs a bit of TLC now, but it looks a damn sight better than it does in Joburg.
I think it would be perfect. I mean, if it was just left in the hands of the right people who could manage things properly. You know, it is important that we have a good airport with everything showcasing, particularly like when you want to like entice people to South Africa and show them what we have available and everything we've got on offer. It's one of the most important things that you can have as an airport that's inviting. So yeah, it would be nice if it did fall in the hands of people who actually gave a shit. It would make it work proper.
Yeah, so a lot of news this week, Ryan, as there has been. It's quite amazing that, you know, I've certainly noticed the trend since starting the podcast and trying to, you know, bring the stories into the show. It's a hell of a lot easier now to do it. You've almost got to pick and choose what you do talk about every week. Like I say, I am excited about the Indian market. I do want to start talking about that more week on week. And if there's anyone out there that wants to communicate with us or chat to us about the Indian market, then please give us a shout and you know, take that opportunity as well now to just thank everyone that does communicate with us on such a regular basis and give us the insights of at least the vibe of the area that a lot of our friends and ex-colleagues and people that we've met purely from the podcast give us every week, you know, without you actually telling us, look, this is what's going on here. This is why I left Hong Kong and went there. It'll be difficult for us to actually report on it. So we rely heavily on people actually giving us the inside gen.
Yeah, exactly. Not only that, I mean, just the odd comment on every week's show is such a good punt as well. I mean, we've got our regulars, you know, Duncan and Oki and Alan and all the guys that, you know, that get in touch with us every week and let us know, you know, what they think of the show and, you know, what they enjoyed and what they didn't, and obviously, you know, have their bit to say about the topics that we've chosen as well. It adds a lot, and we really appreciate it, and you know, couldn't do it without you guys.
No, couldn't at all. A little pun for the show as well, Ryan. If you know anyone that enjoys this type of content that you think might enjoy this type of show, then please share it along. It goes a hell of a long way. We're going to start adding a few other things on. We've now grown enough that we're eligible for one or two more things that we weren't before. So stand by for a bit of maneuvering, and hopefully we can grow on certain platforms, certainly things, platforms like Spotify. In the near future, we'll be adding a few extra little things on there.
That's very cool.
Very cool.
I'd dig in a little icon on Spotify, like next to Joe Rogan. Like,
You think so?
Yeah, it'd be quite cool.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I think so. Upcoming events this week, anything worth talking about?
This weekend for me personally, got quite a lot going on. Tomorrow's my mom's birthday.
Oh, nice.
Saturday is
Happy birthday, General Jill.
Saturday is Valmarie's birthday.
Oh, wow. So you got an expensive weekend.
Yeah, and then next weekend is little Blake's birthday. So yeah, April is a busy month in my family birthday wise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How's the guitar stuff going, pal?
Absolutely loving it. Every night trying to spend some time dedicating, you know, some time to just practicing, jamming, and I'm loving the journey. I really am. In some respects, it gets a bit lonely. I don't have the, you know, the like what you have is going to jiu-jitsu twice a week. You go to a class,
Yeah.
you meet a bunch of guys. This is kind of a very sort of solo type gig that I'm on now, you know.
Yeah.
But it's nice. I love it. It gives me the time to just relax, enjoy it, and I feel a hell of a lot better after every little practice session. And yeah, one or two things happening there. I can just about put together a song or two.
You're making good progress.
Yeah, so nearly there. But yeah, definitely one of the coolest things I've decided to try and do in the last few months. That's for sure.
No, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, the jiu-jitsu's going well. It's hard starting stuff when you're over 40. I think. It is.
Yeah,
It's not as straightforward.
you don't learn
when you're
as quick and like it's something I've seen with the guitar as well. Like it takes a certain amount of dexterity in your fingers to be able to change chords and that quite quickly. It doesn't happen so quick.
No.
It's a lot of practice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah, it does take a bit longer. And there's also that sort of element of, I think when you're a bit younger, I wouldn't say embarrassed is the right word, but you kind of go for it a bit more. And if you mess up or whatever,
Yeah.
as you get a little bit older, you don't want to make so many mistakes. But it's going well, I must say. I'm really enjoying it. I've stuck to it. I've been to every class this year so far. I haven't missed a class. Progressing, incremental gains. I mean, and sometimes a little bit up and down. I said to Nicole last night, sometimes I feel like I'm going backwards with it because you have a few good sessions and then you go and then you just get absolutely choked out by all these other guys and you think, but what am I doing wrong now? I should be getting better. And I think a lot of it is because you start thinking about it more.
Yes.
Like thinking, you instead of just letting it happen and going for it, you kind of, there's too much thinking going on. But no, really enjoying it.
I can completely relate. I mean, first of all, you get the days when you're up for it and the days when you're not. So I've definitely noticed that as well. There's times where you're definitely making progress and times when you seem to plateau and times where you just think like, shit, why can't I get this right today? That happens. I suppose it's just part of being human. But also, I think the one thing you're definitely doing right, and that's the thing that we've always been so stern on, is the consistency. Showing up, doing it every week. And, we spoke about the other day. If you didn't go to that jiu-jitsu, if you just miss one session, you're kind of going to feel like you've let yourself down. And I feel the same. Like you've decided to do this thing. Doesn't matter what you're doing. You've committed to it and you want to get good at it. The only way to do it is to stay consistent, hammer it out until such time as it actually just happens. It's important, man.
Well, we called it to each other the other day. What's our strength with what we did with the podcast? Consistency. Just blind consistency.
Yeah.
So if we're going to win something, it's because we consistently do it. And I think that's so important. But I kind of found a little mini calling there. Obviously, in my class, most of the guys are younger than me. There's a couple of guys about my age and maybe one guy a little bit older. And the youngsters, for a youngster to do it, and I'm talking, guys, most of the guys are still in school, 18, 19, 20-year-olds. But there was a local competition last week in Randburg. But, one of these events where people come from all over South Africa to compete. And, I could have competed. I can put my name in the draw and go and compete. But, that's certainly not why I'm doing it. But a lot of these youngsters who white belts like me, so very little experience, but basic skills, they put their name in the draw and they go compete in these competitions, which takes a hell of a amount of guts. It really does. I mean, these guys, because in jiu-jitsu, you've got, obviously when you're wearing a gi, you've got the belt, so you'll compete with someone that's your belt. But when you competing in a no-gi competition, you can be a white belt. You're competing against a guy that's a blue or purple belt. And the oak's gonna choke you out. So these youngsters are sort of competing in these things, and I kind of sort of found a little bit of a calling there because you can see leading up to the event, the nerves and everything. And then a few of the youngsters lost. I mean, one of the guys lost the three fights. He lost all three. And he was like, you could tell he was a bit down about it. I said, but it's not the competing. You're not there to try and win.
Yeah.
You know, the fact that you entered, the fact that you did that, you're going to be better for next time. And the whole thing is an experience in itself.
Yeah.
And to try and make these guys feel better about the fact, like, look, winning in this is not the point. You're not going out there to be
It's the showing up.
It's the showing up.
Yeah.
And the guts and determination it actually takes to enter that ring and actually go and fight is a victory on itself.
Yeah.
So it's a hell of a thing to go and compete in something like that. So I've kind of taken that role of like the older, mysterious dude that's got a podcast, but he's kind of got a bit of motivational side to him. That's kind of my vibe with the guys.
So you like the modern day Mr. Miyagi?
Yeah.
Wax on, wax off.
Yeah, exactly.
That's very cool.
It's not about the winning. It's about the just showing up.
I think there's definitely there's room for that kind of mentorship right now. We were having a conversation the other day. You know, youngsters nowadays, I think there's a lack of proper mentorship. This world's gone so woke, and there's so much of, yeah, this is okay. It's okay to go with that. Blah 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 blah. The old days of like, listen, boys, harden the fuck up and just you know, be men about things. There's a lack of that, so it's cool. You know,
that's why I respect those guys that are doing the fighting and that, because it's not an easy thing. You know, going in there and there's another guy you're facing, and he wants to rip your head off.
Yeah,
and you are trying to either stop that from happening or ripping his head off. So it's a hell of a thing for particularly these youngsters to go and do.
There's also something very cool though about going now and being older and trying something that you think is awkward. I mean, it's the same. I walk into a music shop. I know very little about what's going on. I say to the guy, oh, listen, I'm new at this. I want to try this, and I'm keen on this. And you'd almost expect the guy to say, like, geez, are you joking, man? You're way too old. But the guys are very encouraging. Like, yeah, no, get into this. This looks like it's going to cost you money. As is,
avoid this trap. Try that next time.
But it's very cool, and I'm excited to be on this kind of journey that I'm on. But with everything though.
Paul, good show as always. Next week, let's talk about that single pilot operations. Let's talk about where we think it's going. And please get in touch with us. Let us know what you think beforehand so we can chat about it on the show.
100%. As always, it's been a joy. Guys, catch you next week.
Cheers, Paul.
Take it easy.
Bye.